Good morning, students. We come back again to the same chapter, a continuation of the last chapter in our class of home science today. So we had started this chapter with what is nutrition, which I've earlier explained to you, which means that the various processes that takes place within the body due to the food that we have eaten in different amounts according to our age, health, and disease is known as nutrition. So we can say that it is a chemical process that takes place within our body because of the food that we have eaten. And this food varies. It is not the same for all and is mainly dependent on age, health, and diseases I've already mentioned earlier. Then we find that there can be two types of nutrition. That is, some people overeat, which we call as overnutrition, and that too is not right for the body because this causes a person to increase in weight, and as a result of this, many diseases start occurring. So what we find is that there is an optimum level or a correct level of food that every individual or every person must consume. So here we find that both overnutrition and undernutrition both are bad. Undernutrition can be a bad case where people suffer from malnutrition, that is, the growth is retarded, especially in children, and the physical development doesn't take place. We notice certain retardation, etc. in the body. Then a person may start suffering from anemia, goiter, etc. due to undernutrition. So the correct intake of food is very important to remain healthy. And in this context, we have studied in our previous class about the different food groups that a person must consume. That is, he must have a balanced diet. And this balanced diet must include, as we have studied, the energy-giving food, that is carbohydrates and fats, the bodybuilding food, that is proteins, then along with that, small quantities of vitamins and minerals are very important, which we will look into today in detail. And as we have also studied, that water and roughage, that is fibers, are very important for the removal of waste materials from the body, so that a person may have longevity of life, that is, he may have a long life, and the rate of mortality should fall. That is, the death rate in the country should decrease. So in this context today, let us study in detail about the role of the different vitamins in our body. As I have mentioned earlier to you also, that vitamins are needed in small amounts along with minerals, and we can say that what are vitamins, then we can say are organic substances which the body requires to carry out the different metabolic functions. I think you all have a fair idea about what is metabolism through your biology class. That is, metabolism is made up of two processes, anabolism and catabolism. Anabolism, as we know, is addition of new materials to the human body, while catabolism would be removal of the dead cells or the waste from the body. These vitamins, what we find is that helps in the metabolic process of our body and are either fat soluble or water soluble. The fat soluble vitamins are vitamin A, D, E, and K, while the water soluble vitamins are vitamin C and vitamin B complex. And mainly we find that these vitamins that the body cannot produce in its own by itself. It has to be taken in through food. And overcooking of food destroys the vitamins. We must remember about this. So let's today begin with the fat-soluble vitamins. The fat-soluble vitamins, we begin with vitamin A. We find that vitamin A is mainly synthesized by the green plants in the presence of chlorophyll, which is present in the green leafy vegetables. It is also present in animal food. So it is a fat soluble vitamin which gets destroyed very fast when exposed to light. Once again, I repeat, vitamin A is produced by the chlorophyll found in the green plants, along in the leafy vegetables, and also in animal food. But once it is exposed to sunlight and other different forms of light, it easily, we find, gets destroyed. 1/3 of the carotenes, it's found in carrots. So 1/3 of the carotenes are absorbed by the body while the rest is discarded. And why does the human body need vitamin A? Very simple. For good eyes, we find that it is due to vitamin A deficiency that people suffer from night blindness and poor vision. So vitamin A is very important for the eyes. Then we find that it protects what you call the cornea and the epithelial cells of the eyes. Sweat glands. With shortage of vitamin A results in the sweat glands getting blocked many a times. Then kidney. Deficiency among animals, we see, results in stones in the kidney. Vitamin A is very essential for the human body as it helps to control the stones in the kidney. Then irregular development of skeleton and teeth may also take place if the body doesn't have enough of vitamin A. So these are the main functions of vitamin A in our body, and it's mainly found in milk products like cream, butter, cheese, egg yolk, fatty fish, carrots, pumpkins, ripe papaya, mangoes are good sources of vitamin A. And if it is deficient in our human body, we find that people suffer from burning, itching, dryness of the eyes. So deficiency needs to be avoided. Followed by that, we move on to the next vitamin, another fat-soluble vitamin, that is vitamin D. Vitamin D, what we find is that is generally can be synthesized by the human body if a person sits in sunlight. That's why small children are put in sunlight or are asked to play in sunlight so that the body can absorb the vitamin D from the sunlight. But a good source of vitamin D is cod liver oil, which has been used for curing a disease that is rickets, malfunctioning of the bones in children. So this vitamin, what we find is that is mainly associated with bone development. The main function is it helps the human body to absorb calcium and phosphorus in the small intestine. In the absence of vitamin D, even if we eat enough of calcium and phosphorus, the human body will not be able to absorb it. So vitamin D has to be there along with calcium and phosphorus so that it can be absorbed in the human body. It favors calcification. Then what we find is it promotes absorption of phosphorus in the kidney. Then onset of rickets can be detected earlier in human beings, and it helps to make the bone strong for a normal growth. The main sources of vitamin D are butter, egg, liver, fish like tuna, sardines, fish liver oils. They are mainly rich in vitamins. And the symptoms or the deficiency results, as I've just now spoken about, is mainly rickets, where we find that the bone doesn't develop properly. Sweating, irritability are also signs of deficiency of vitamin D. Commonly seen in children, especially among those children who are not exposed to the sunlight. Like we find that in certain religions you have to wear a parda. So children wear a parda and do not come out in the sunlight. The body is unable to get the sun's rays. So as a result of this, rickets occur. And the long bones of the legs bend with the body weight. And children suffer from knock knees. Then we find the pelvic girdle also gets deformed. And among others, if there is a deficiency of vitamin D, then we find that the vertebral column starts bending and you suffer from pains, aches, and muscle pains, etc. So the human body needs enough of vitamin D. Now next we move on to the water-soluble vitamin. That is vitamin B complex, a very essential component of the vitamin which the human body needs, along with vitamin C. This vitamin I'm saying is complex, B complex. Why? Because it includes a number of vitamins and each one has got a different chemical function in our human body. Like thiamine, the names are thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, choline, biotin, folic acid, cobalamin, etc. So let us, not much in detail, but briefly look at the functions of the different vitamin B complex. We begin with thiamine, the water-soluble vitamin, which we find easily gets destroyed in an alkaline medium. The human body needs thiamine for the nerves, well-being of the nerves. It promotes appetite, digestion, and improves the normal tissue function of the human body. Then it is closely associated with carbohydrate metabolism. That is, the chemical action of the carbohydrate in our body increases with the intake of thiamine, and especially essential for women who are pregnant, that is about to give birth. The main sources of thiamine are whole grain cereals, flour, peas, beans, pulses, nuts, etc. And deficiency of thiamine results in a disease called as beriberi, where we find a person may suffer from loss of appetite, vomiting, diarrhea, then suffers from nervous problem, fatigue, mental depression, nervous instability. All these are caused due to lack of thiamine. We move to the next vitamin B complex. That is one of the components. The next component is riboflavin. What we find is that it is yellow and crystalline and easily it is stable in boiling in acid and alkaline solutions. And it is mainly needed by the human body for metabolism of carbohydrates, proteins, fats. I know you cannot remember so much. I'll be putting it down in my notes so that it will be easy for you to remember. I'll put it in a tabular form so you can easily refer to it. It is needed to prevent the skin rashes and cracking of lips, tongues, etc. The main sources are cereals. Like today what we find is that fruits, roots, vegetables are not such good sources of this vitamin. Meat, especially liver, milk, green vegetables and grain, and fair amount of vitamins. Liver contains a good amount of riboflavin. So what we find is that it is found in milk also. If this vitamin is lost, if the food is cooked in large quantity of water. This is another thing we have to remember while cooking food. Yes, we need to add water for cooking foods, but too much water, what we find is that it makes the vitamins very soluble, and overcooking will result in wastage. That is, the action or the chemical action of the vitamin it gets diluted, cannot take place. Deficiency of riboflavin starts causing sores in the mouth, inflammation in the tongue, lips start cracking, then dermatitis, skin becomes rough, scaly, and we find that the eyelids feel rough, the eyes become sensitive to light, and dryness of the body starts taking place due to the lack of riboflavin. Moving on to the next component of the vitamin B complex is folic acid. Folic acid is mainly essential for the human body for metabolism of proteins, regeneration of red blood cells, that is production of red blood cells, so that the body doesn't suffer from anemia. And if we suffer from anemia, automatically what happens is that there is lack of oxygen in the blood and we start gasping for breath. Folic acid is essential for the normal functioning of the gastrointestinal tract, that is for the digestion process. So hence it is an important part of the vitamin B complex which a human being needs to take, because its deficiency will lead to a very important disease, anemia. And the person becomes pale, tired, and the fingers, toes start tingling. So daily, what we find is that an infant will require at least 50 milligrams, while an adult requires 50 to 100 milligrams. The next vitamin we move on to is vitamin C, or ascorbic acid, another water-soluble vitamin which we find is destroyed by metals. In the presence of metals, it gets destroyed. And this vitamin is very important to take care of our gums. Then our gums as well as mouth, sore throat, sore mouth, and all can be avoided. It is required for intracellular glandular substance, that is within the cell. It helps to bind the cells in the tissues, which is very important. You have studied in your junior classes in class 7, 8 about tissues, and there we talk about a tissue called as connective tissue, which binds the other tissues together. And this connective tissue can only perform its function if the body has enough of vitamin C. And maintenance of collagen, a protein essential for binding and cementing the teeth and jaws. Then it is required to check the rupturing of the capillary wall, essential for healing wounds, production of red blood cells. And the good sources of this vitamin are fruits and vegetables like guava, carrots, cherries, then the whole citrus family, that is oranges, musambi, the sweet lime, the red tomatoes. They are all very good sources of vitamin C. Then germinated, that is sprouted moong dal, and all also contain a good amount of vitamin C needed by the body. Deficiency of this disease ultimately results in a disease called scurvy. And when scurvy takes place, that means lack of vitamin C will interfere, and the body will not be able to absorb enough of iron and folic acid, ultimately causing anemia and fatigue. Then bleeding of the gums begin, interferes with the synthesis of collagen, that is the elasticity in the cells, and clotting of blood. So hence, at least 40 milligrams are recommended for an adult each day. So vitamin C also of huge importance. Now with this, we know as to how much quantity of different vitamins the body needs to consume. Then moving on next, another minor thing which needs to be there in our food are minerals. The different minerals about which you study in chemistry, like calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sodium, chlorine, sulfur, all these together are also very important for the proper functioning of the body, but in small quantities. Now, why are minerals important? Because minerals control the acid-base balance in our body. That is, the pH value of our blood should not be acidic, neither alkaline. And for this reason, minerals are important. Phosphorus, sulfur, chlorine are acid-forming elements, while calcium, potassium, sodium are alkaline-forming elements. So for this reason, the contraction and relaxation of muscles are dependent on minerals like calcium, sodium, chlorine, etc. Then fluoride, very important for the teeth and bones. Iodine, as we all know, is needed for the proper functioning of the thyroid glands in the production of thyroxine. Then salts like sodium and potassium are important for intracellular maintaining a fluid balance in the extracellular and intracellular part of our body. Now, moving on next, Let's begin with first calcium. Now, 75% of the total mineral matter present in the human body is calcium, and very essential for strong and healthy teeth. Then it gives a rigidity to the bones and prevents rickets, needed for normal functioning of muscles, for formation, for blood clotting. Along with vitamin K, calcium is important for the clotting of blood. Otherwise, the whole blood from our body will get removed the moment we suffer from an injury. Then nervous impulses, which are carried by the nerve cells, the neurons, also get activated or are able to function properly in the presence of calcium. And the good sources of calcium are milk, butter, ghee. These are leafy green vegetables like spinach, methi, sarso, mint, soya bean, red kidney beans, rajma, legumes, peas are all good sources. Even jaggery or gur is a good source of calcium. The second mineral, which again is important for the human body, very important, is iron. Because iron is needed for the tissue respiration, as it is a part of hemoglobin. As you all know, it forms the compound oxyhemoglobin by combining with oxygen and carries oxygen to each and every cell of our body. And at the same time, what we find is that the more a person whose blood has good hemoglobin content will be much more energetic in comparison to a person whose body doesn't have much hemoglobin. So it is required in muscular contractions, brings about oxidation of proteins, fats, carbohydrates. Then iron along with protein gives the color and composition of blood and helps a person to be energetic. Good sources of iron are definitely the green leafy vegetables. And we get a good quantity of iron also from soya bean, bajra, wheat, rice bran, jaggery are also good sources of iron. But what we find is that if there is a deficiency of iron, which I mentioned earlier, person starts suffering from anemia. So a person needs minimum 38 grams of what you call iron in his or her daily food requirements. And moving on next, we come to the next mineral, iodine. Iodine is needed in very small amounts, but very important for energy metabolism in the human body because it controls the activity of the thyroid gland, which produces the thyroid stimulating hormone TSH. And what we find is that this is an important what you call enzyme needed by the body. Sorry, not enzyme, hormone needed by the body so that each and every organ of a body can properly function. So iodine helps to control the oxidation of carbon and energy metabolism, functioning of the nerves, normal growth in human beings. And the good sources of iodine are what we find is that this is mainly got from use of iodized water and salt. And seafoods also contain a good quantity of iodine. Its deficiency results in a disease called as goiter, where swelling of the neck take place. So recommended 100 to 150 grams of iodine for the human body. So in this way, minerals, as we have discussed today, are also very important for the proper functioning of the human body. We'll continue more about this chapter in our next class. Thank you.